Hey, kia ora everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of Digital Footprints, a podcast by BIMinNZ. I'm your host, Jake Nash, and I want to start this episode by just saying a huge thank you to our first 6 guests who appeared in our first 5 episodes of the podcast. We released it as a block last month, and the feedback that we've got has been awesome. We have a great backlog of guests, so we think we can bring you these podcasts fortnightly, all the way up to the end of the year. So keep an eye on the YouTube channel and keep an eye on the Spotify channel for new episodes as they arrive fortnightly. If you're on our YouTube channel, you might have also noticed that we launched BIMinNZ Live. So BIMinNZ Live are the recorded versions of our monthly live events that we do. So the episode that we launched last week was Alex Hampshire from WT, talking about the process of working with LT McGuinness to develop a digital twin for Te Reo archives. Now, our guest today is an awesome one. It's Sam Wiffen from Reveal. Sam and I go way back. We studied together in the mid-2000s at Massey University, and we used to always call him Sam the Man or Sam Can Do, because he just always had this attitude where you knew he was going to go on and do some awesome stuff. And sure enough, he talks about his journey working through studying and then working through his early career and eventually getting to a point where he decided to found his own company with the help of some friends. And now he's doing stuff that is absolutely world leading. I'm really impressed with the spotlight he's got globally, and I'm really impressed with the style of work that he's doing. It's a little bit different to the usual guests you'll find on this podcast, but I think his story is really relevant to anyone in the digital innovation and construction technology space. So here it is. I hope you really enjoy my conversation with Sam. Cheers, everyone.
Here he is.
Hey.
Hey, mate.
How's it?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm good, man. I just sent you a link.
Oh, yeah, cool. No, I got
Sent
it. It growled at me.
I sent you a photo. Let's see when you see it.
Oh, yeah, okay. My brain instantly went to a particular one.
Yeah. Is it that one?
Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah, that is that one.
I was thinking, like, how funny if he kind of brought that up. That would be so good.
Yeah. Can you believe that was like that was 20 years ago, man?
20 years ago.
Yeah, 2005. That photo was taken.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Good, it's awesome.
Yeah. That was good.
Look what we've done.
Look at you now. What's going on in your world?
Lots of stuff. Wrangling kids. Come back to New Zealand for the weekend.
Oh yeah, you mentioned you're coming back to sort out some house stuff.
Yeah.
Quick trip.
Just a statistic, mate. Just another statistic shooting across the ditch. But yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about that when we do.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, a few other little things. Got the big Bentley thing tomorrow, which will be interesting.
Oh right. Where's that? Is that in Sydney?
Illuminate.
Yeah. Yeah. Bentley, massive in your space, right? In the infrastructure space. They're kind of leading that in a lot of respects.
Yeah. And some big moves have moved into the spatial.
Yeah.
With the acquisition of Cesium as well, which has been pretty cool.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's because obviously back when I first got into the industry, we were using Bentley products, we were using MicroStation, which was like CAD. It was the same as AutoCAD, basically.
Yeah.
It's different tools. But
tons of people using MicroStation.
Yeah. And once kind of everyone moved towards Autodesk, there was almost like people these days don't even know what Bentley is if they primarily work in vertical buildings.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. But there's this whole other area that, like, I remember, we were at that Digital Twin Summit together, and the guys from Bentley were there, and it's like, oh wow, you guys are doing some awesome work in the space that I just didn't even know existed.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. They've got some pretty awesome stuff. remember early on they were doing some stuff around, I think edgewise, they were doing some edge detection on point clouds, which was
Yeah.
interesting. Um, but yeah, the Autodesk, I was just when I was in the States learning about some of the stuff Autodesk is doing with the Olympics.
Yeah.
My gosh, they are big.
Yeah. Yeah, and only growing too.
What did they do? It was like 7 billion US profit last year.
Yeah. It's nuts. It's insane. Have you ever been to AU?
No, I need
No,
to.
I haven't either. I might at some point. I don't
Oh,
know. I
you need to reach out to Seoul. Do you know of Seoul?
no.
Hey, Seoul
SOL?
Armour, SOL Armour,
Hmm.
AMOUR. I did uni with him at Vic, and he was running, what was it called for Autodesk? He's way up there, he's product manager, and it was
Hmm.
awesome. I caught up with Sol recently, because he's, in the product space. And he just absolutely schooled me. He's like, "No, what do you think about like that? Do it like this." I'm like, "Shit, I don't know, man. That's fucking awesome." But yeah, what's that? There was an Autodesk product where you could kind of connect different apps together. Started with D. Can't remember.
Hmm.
Anyway, you should. I'll do an intro actually.
Yeah.
Um, the man. Yeah,
Yeah. Speaking of intros, we kind of just ripped straight into
give it
this,
a.
but
Let's just
yeah.
let's just
Um
start, and you can kind of like guide where we
yeah, yeah. Well, we've started. Um
we have.
why don't you start by telling our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Awesome, cool. So I'm Sam Wiffen. I am the founder and director of Reveal. I suppose I come from the trenches. I grew up sort of working in construction and then went to Wellington and did some stuff, which we might get into a little bit more. But Reveal. Reveal was founded primarily as a utility surveying company with a core of geophysics in New Zealand. Started in Wellington and Christchurch. And now we are one of the largest AI utility providers for spatial underground information in the world. Currently based in Sydney.
Yeah. That's awesome. Um and from pretty humble beginnings too.
Yeah, man.
Just an idea or a frustration, I'm sure, and then sort of just deciding, well, if no one else is going to solve it, we will. We'll get into all of that, but yeah, and you and I, we go pretty far back,
Yeah, we
right?
go way back, man. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
do.
So for those out there listening, Sam and I we studied architectural technology together in 2005.
Yeah.
The famed program at Massey that ran for what I think about 5 years.
Yep. Yep.
But in that 5 years, produced some pretty awesome people that were the ones that stuck around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And maybe only one or two of them are actually left in tradition. I guess what you'd call traditional architectural technology. Everyone else has kind of gone off and done all kinds of different interesting things. But tell me about what drew you into wanting to study architectural technology in the first place.
Yeah. Good question. Was actually probably, well, I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but I did not do great at high school. I think I just passed like English and graphics, which I think was the kind of closest thing to that in my last year at high school. Failed physics. I was fascinated by physics, but I just wasn't very good at physics. Had good relationships with physics teachers. Just passed sculpture thankfully, through one of the teachers helping me. But I got in the top 1% the entire country for art design. So like
Mm.
design was my thing. And I didn't want to go to uni straight away. I like the idea of working. I like the idea of understanding business. So I went and I thought, actually through a friend growing up, I was like, well, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer for a hot minute. And I thought, well, rather going and do a degree, why don't I work for a law firm? So I did and realized very, very quickly I did not want to be a lawyer nor work around lawyers. Um, and I don't know, I've always worked. I've always worked since I was like 14. So I was cooking. I cooked all through high school at a restaurant. I started washing dishes. So I was cooking in the evening and then working during the day, and then I shifted out and went to construction. My dad was running a construction company in Nelson in New Zealand, and I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the practicality on site and learning. But I wanted to go and do design, so I came to Wellington to Massey. I'm sure you must have known this, but I did a foundation certificate in design
Mm.
which was kind of like the preliminary design before you go off and do design and you figure out whether you're doing graphics or
Yeah.
industrial design. And past that, but I was just too young and immature, and we did a lot of sort of art theory and foundation, which is phenomenal. But I wanted to get into technology too quickly. I wanted to get into computers and looking at that creativity through a digital format. So I swung probably way too hard and went to engineering, which we did, and then started there because I think a couple of other people that I sort of flattered in the halls with were doing that, and it intrigued me. So
Mm.
it was kind of that, and also off the back of the construction side as well. Um, and then I think I only did really like one full-time year, and then I got a job working for Opus uh, as a consultancy firm, a large international engineering consulting firm, and then sort of started to kind of tail off the amount that I was doing at uni. Um, and I just liked the practicality of being able to do it. I remember the interesting things talking to some of the lecturers around going, oh, you lay your jib vertically. I'm like, no, you don't. They go, no, you do. I'm like, the jib guide says, and we're all laying jib horizontally. So it was quite cool to have that practicality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Man, if you didn't like physics, that first trimester where we had the engineering mathematics
Yeah,
and engineering mechanics, just the first two courses that we did, those were brutal, right?
yeah, brutal.
Yeah.
And uh, oh no, when was it? Subsequently, I've been sort of diagnosed with ADHD,
Mm.
and which is I'm super lucky. It's a superpower, but trying to get me to study, like I remember, like trying to study for calculus was just
Yeah.
impossible. Like I couldn't do it. Like physically couldn't do it. It
Yeah.
was just so hard. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock for me as well, I must admit, because I came from Wairoa, right? And not a lot of people leave Wairoa, and it's not a particularly academic school. It's their sole one,
Yeah.
and so you're kind of built up to believe that you're like the brainy kid, you're the smart kid,
Mm.
you're the one that's going to go to uni, and you go to uni and realize that actually you're kind of in the middle, if not a little bit below the middle, is one of the first things I realized. And that no one's going to help you and drag you along. I remember the
Yeah.
first assignment that I got back, because we had an assignment every 2 weeks for that math class,
Yeah.
and the first assignment was trigonometry.
Yeah.
And I remember the lecturer just putting my marked paper back on my desk, 14%. And no, like, hey, you need to do better than this, or hey, that's not good enough. Just here you go, 14%. Moved on to the next person. I realized no one was going to help me but myself.
Yeah.
So it's a lot for like an 18-year-old to learn, but
Yeah.
it was a good cohort, right?
It was cool. It was awesome. It's such
Yeah,
a great spread of humans,
yeah,
which we're still in contact with today, and just learned so much from everyone. And yeah, it was cool.
yeah. And then I ended up taking a gap year.
Yeah.
I went to back to Napier. Wellington was too overwhelming for me coming from a small town, so I went back to somewhere a bit smaller. Did my diploma in CAD,
Yeah.
or CAD design as it was called, and then it wasn't until I was away from Wellington that I realised how much I missed it, and actually I wanted to be in the action. So
Yeah.
I
Cool. That's
came back
cool.
the following year. But we still had a bit of crossover because you're working through yours a bit slower than us. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we still saw each other a bit.
Yeah. Which was awesome. And I think
Yeah.
that yeah, I like that sort of ability to kind of do it slower as well.
Mm.
I ended up getting
Yeah.
a secondment down in Nelson for another year, which was cool.
Yeah.
So that was cool to have a bit of a break and go back home for a bit.
Yeah, and so you were the first of all of us to actually be out on the job too. When you I mean, it's now WSP, but yeah, it was Opus back then.
I think most
So
of WSP used to be another company.
yeah, yeah. Oh, what's that? Sorry.
I think most WSP now has been a
Mm,
very hungry hippo and has acquired
yeah.
lots of companies. So
Oh, right,
everyone
right,
used to
right. Yeah,
probably
yeah,
work for another company. It's a
yeah,
trope that I
yeah,
hear
yeah,
every now
yeah.
and then.
Um, so what was that like? You must have been able to bring some kind of real world experience to what you. And I mean, enough to argue with your lecturers about the way Jib's installed.
I don't
But
really argue with that. It sort of poses
yeah.
a different view. Uh,
Mm,
yeah, it was great. I liked that ability to. It was very different because we chatted the other day. After I did the engineering study, I did a Bachelor of Building Science at Victoria, where you are there.
yeah.
And cohorts were different. The approach was different. What I learnt was very different, but applying that in a work sense was very good. And probably in recognition of, in alignment with what I did at high school. I wasn't very technical. I loved the technical side, but I wasn't the person to do the maths or the crunching. So I
Mm,
jumped straight away into project management, and that's really where I found a deep passion. Uh, Communication was the big thing that,
mm,
and I liked that I suppose the hunger to kind of learn
yeah.
from not only people but also what they do. I think good project managers are one that are sort of almost jacks of all trades because you need to be able to call people out on their bullshit when they're like, "Oh, this is going to take a bit of time." You're like, "No, it's not. It's probably about right for these sorts of things. You don't need to know enough. You need to know enough to be dangerous." And so, so I think that was quite cool. It was challenging though to kind of have that. Right, this is my vocation. This is what I'm passionate about from a project management perspective. But then get pulled into the technicality of studying, and you're
Mm.
like, oh yeah, I get that. And it felt like it was a bit of a departure. So I found that quite tricky. But the building site stuff was interesting because it was chunked up quite well into very, very, very practical assignments and tasks.
Yeah, I want to get to building science in a second because did you do that like directly after you graduated from Massey, or was there a
Mm.
bit of time in between? There was a bit
No,
of
I
time
think
in
it
between,
might have
right?
been. So I got a secondment down to Nelson City Council.
Yeah,
I think Nelson City Council was way behind on their plans in terms of consents, and I kind of came in. That was cool, man. That was
yeah,
cool to just like I knew the code backwards, and just going
yeah,
through there and learn an enormous amount, and sort of actually got to see the inside of like a public entity and a council, and the other side of, hey, here's the design, here's something we're proposing, and especially being a project manager as well, trying to get these things through, and then some of the bullshit that happens as well,
yeah. I bet.
just archaic process, but being able to go through and learn the code really, really well was an awesome opportunity. So I did that, and then I came back and I think I cross-credited a whole heap of courses and got stuck in, and
Yeah,
just again just did that part-time while I was working full-time.
yeah. Still with Opus at the time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah.
great.
So I only found out about this
Yeah.
Bachelor of Building Science that you did last time we spoke, which was recently. But how did you find the difference between architectural technology and everything that encompassed, which has changed quite a lot compared to what it looks like now? It was much more engineering focused back when we went through, especially in that first year,
Yeah.
versus building science. And I guess also why did you feel like you needed to do a second bachelor? Was it just more of an interest thing, or were you trying to sharpen up on a particular set of skills? What
It was a
what
very good
what was
question.
that about?
I don't actually
Yeah,
know the answer.
yeah,
But I think I've always enjoyed sort of studying and learning new things.
mm,
Um, Continue to do so even now, in terms of academic stuff. But uh, no, I think probably I'd started to kind of form that philosophy of project management, wanting to understand and learn a bit more from a wider perspective. It was
yeah,
really interesting though. Uh, I remember when we were first starting to use Revit or learn Revit, and
mm,
you'll know. I don't know if this is true, but I felt like we were one of the first sort of cohorts. Tom Sheridan, the legend, uh,
Yeah.
the Shark Father, ahead of us, and his cohort, I think, were probably the first, were they? Maybe they
No,
were.
we were the first.
We were.
Well, we had the option. They were teaching ArchiCAD.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Um,
right.
your year, the year that I took a gap year, was the first year that was it Russell and
Yeah,
Les,
Russell.
it
Yeah.
was Russell, right?
Yeah.
Russell Wallace,
Yep.
the lecturer.
Yes.
He said, "Oh, there's this new tool called Revit. Autodesk hadn't purchased them at this point,
Yeah.
um, and the market seems to be leaning towards that. You have the option of learning ArchiCAD or Revit, and
Yeah.
the class voted on Revit, which was, in hindsight, a good call.
Cool. Cool.
I was at EIT
Yeah.
for that year learning ArchiCAD and developed
Oh.
quite a taste for ArchiCAD. So when I came back to Massey to continue
Yeah,
my
the
studies,
savage addiction you need to get rid of.
I hated Revit. I hated it, and which is funny now because I teach it,
Yeah.
um, and I've kind of become the Revit guy within the industry here in Wellington.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. It was just, I mean, they were so similar, but it was just trying to unlearn something. But yeah, so and I can't recall when Autodesk actually purchased them
Yeah.
or the changes they
No.
made, but yeah, I do remember that being an option that was presented to us.
Well, so when I remember, learning Revit and using it and the questions we kind of had and the challenge, and it was quite tricky for the lecturers because we're going, well, how do we do detailing? And we go, oh, we'll have to bring in CAD and use that. And we were learning CAD at the same time. But I'll come back to the kind of the start of Revit in Wellington, which I think is an interesting topic. But sort of fast forward a few years when I was doing the building science stuff, there wasn't really a focus, but it was interesting to kind of have that sort of foundational knowledge and then see where it sort of had shot off a little bit. So I was like, that's interesting. And the architects were probably handling a lot more of that. So it was a departure from the drafting and modeling side to more of the analysis of buildings, which I thoroughly enjoyed. That was
Yeah, I bet.
awesome doing
That's right up
thermal
your
and
alley.
lighting and acoustics and so much more. It was really cool, and they were really cool practical projects. And like, go find a building, find someone you know. If you don't, knock on a door. And then we had to like model them, and it was such a cool little cohort. And everyone would go in and quickly go through and build just a SketchUp model, and then someone would like, bro, can I borrow the SketchUp model? And then you'd do your own little analysis as well. Big lesson from Peter Battensby. I remember when we were doing CAD, we had to go down to the metal machine shop, and there was like a fitting tool that we had to go and model, and he's like, you get one chance to measure it. And
Yeah.
the lesson around capture once and capture repeat has stuck with me for a long time. And fast forward to like reveal days where it's super, super expensive to go back to site and to go and capture information that's underground again. You got $1 million
Yeah.
radar. Like, that was such a cool lesson to kind of grab with me around data capture. Do it once, do it right, dot your I's, cross the T's. It was just an interesting sort of side. But yeah, the building science stuff was awesome. It was really sort of directed, work in teams. There was a lot of competition with the cohort, but real like positive, healthy competition, which was different to our cohort. But it was really, really cool. And there was there was lots of big lessons. One in our final year, or sorry, in our second last year, we had to do a full analysis of some building. I did the Kathmandu building up in Otaki, which my mates owned.
Yeah.
And we had, I think, like 30,000 words to do the report. And in the final year, it was the exact same scope where we had to do it in 10,000 words. And you're just like, boom, easy. Holy shit, it was so hard. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so much harder to be succinct.
Yeah.
And especially what I'd learned working for a large engineering consulting firm, you had to almost like out tech some of the engineers to build respect. So it was how verbose could you be? We even did it with writing business cases for Transparent. We'd have a competition around like going, what's the most ludicrous words that we can kind of throw in here to kind of flex the ego. It was quite funny. But that was like what a beautifully simple transition from going exact same assignment, but do it in a third the amount of words. And
Yeah.
watching everyone go, easy. I'm like, say that now.
It's so much harder to say something in 3 minutes than it is to say it in 20, right?
Yeah, was it
And
Lincoln that said, apologies for the long letter, I didn't have enough time to write a short one?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
classic.
I
And
do it all the time now. I'm horrific at it.
and sometimes you only have 30 seconds. Like, people have made up their mind if they're going to listen to you within that time.
Yeah.
So having the skill to say what you need to say succinctly is awesome, and it's great. I hadn't thought of that, just getting people to do the same thing, but with 30% of the time or resource or word count to do it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I got a million questions, and I'm lucky enough to have spent a bit of time at universities and have friends that are there, but how you and your kin grapple with AI must be insane, because that would be an easy thing as a student go,
Yeah, I can,
do that.
mate, I can tell you all about that.
Amazing.
We could touch on that. Yeah. Look, the reality is that every university and every lecturer and every course has their own policies around AI. Our philosophy within construction is people are allowed to use it because you can't stop people from using it.
Totally.
And they're going to go out into an industry where people are using it. But what we try to do is give them the right tools to use it critically.
Yeah.
So there's like there's like a diagram. It's like 3 dots. It's curiosity, content, criticism, right? Content, that's the AI. You come to the AI with your questions, your curiosity. What is it that you're trying to understand? Your benchmark, and then the AI tool is basically just a processing tool that can give you all of this information and give you all of these different paths that you can follow down. But then you have to have a critical lens over it, because it can hallucinate, give you bad information. And that's the most important part. But also, we are finding that, and I found this in industry as well, people are just losing the ability to think critically or analyze or just their attention span. There's in all industries, not just ours, and not just in education, but out in the quote unquote real world, as we're not really supposed to call it at university. The access to immediate answers without the need to go and figure out how to find them is training people to not have the attention span to put in long hours of work to get what they need. If they can get it immediately, they lose their ability to do research or to do digging or investigation to find the answers. That's some of the things we're finding. I don't know. I imagine that it's similar for people out in your world and in architecture and BIM and all the rest.
Yeah, I think I exist a lot on the business side more than anything. I see a lot of just the outcome is just to get something out. I don't see a lot of rigor over what has been put out. I think it's novel for a lot of people now. They're like, oh man, I can produce this like deck for like a tender or a proposal, and you see all the clunky, weird AI images that are done in diagrams, and I'm going, you read this? Have you seen what this says? And I'm going, man, this is tricky, because you're going to send that to someone that will then analyze that using AI, and like, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
And
you forget what good looks like.
Yeah. And I'm by no means good at this, but I've been trying really, really hard since, ChatGPT sort of showed up, and I've just been playing with it and trying to figure it out. And there's been some phenomenal things, but also a lot of rigor around how I'm sort of conditioning it to kind of give me those, and not give me pats on the back, but to shin kick me and hold me to account. That takes a lot of effort to do that, and you can kind of see this quite a self-gratifying loop that you could find yourself in, which is bad and bad because it kind of sends you down this thing, especially if you're not being held to account by wider people around you on that. So, and the big thing as well, like, yeah, definitely from industry, but like I've got young kids. My oldest is 14, and the gravity of the responsibility of a parent and not fucking these kids up and like trying to give them the best platform to be good humans is real. But also the huge questions that we see in the media all the time, like everyone's going to not have jobs and this sort of stuff. And my wife Daya and I approach this in a way of from a human centric of like we just want to have really kind and empathetic humans. My belief is that like we're always going to need leaders of other people, so driving that is huge. But similar to AI, I think having good context is important. So like Arlo's washing dishes at a cafe. He's just applying to go work for McDonald's. My theory is like just go out and do heaps of stuff. Like go and do heaps of jobs. But just build your context because the more and more you have context, like we're super lucky, he's really into history. And so I feel like history and ethics and philosophy driving this to purely to help him ask really good questions. So we help them ask really good questions and sort of not sort of agree and go, well, I don't really, like I get that, but why not this? And to question authority, which, holy shit, they do question authority probably more than we'd like at the moment. But it's great. It's great to see that kind of passion there. But I think that context is huge. And when you were saying like before, people can sort of like shortcut this all. One of my good mates, he's got a habit. I think he reads one a day, but he's got a habit of reading one scientific paper a day, like a proper scientific paper that's been published every single day. It's just fresh out the gate. So I'm doing that once a week, and there's no like chuck it in ChatGPT and summarize. It's like read the entire thing, and I feel like that long form rigor, what's new, and understanding that is super important. I've learned so much just by doing that.
Yeah, they're hard to read.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
I
are.
in my new role, I'm expected to write them, but it's you have that's a good example of having to have an attention span, having to pay attention, having to properly read and analyze. And it's got me back into reading. I used to love reading, and then I stopped for a long time, but I'm kind of on my 7th book of the year now. I've just it's sort of reawakened that in me.
That's cool. Here's a shout out to the annoying people in this world that like to talk to the person they sit next to on the plane. I used to do a lot more. I don't do it as much. I'm a grumpy asshole now. But I
seasoned.
Yeah. I talked to some guy and he gave me a link, and it's been one of the best things. There's a website called Arts and Letters Daily, and it is awesome. It's around essays, books, and long form articles, and they are phenomenally well written and researched and above my reading level. And that's been such a great resource for me over 20 years, probably. No, yes, 15 years. It's been cool.
Yeah.
Check it out.
I will. That sounds awesome. I'm real keen to get into how Reveal started, but before I do that, I'll share one last little anecdote. I like to use AI sometimes to just organize my thoughts and get them in a bit of a and to do gap analysis on things I maybe haven't thought of that might be worth. So actually, I used it and I said, "Tell me about Sam Wiffen." I didn't say anything. Tell me about Sam Wiffen from Reveal. I'm going to have him on as a guest. And first, it hypes you up. So, Sam Wiffen is a perfect guest. He's exactly what you need for this podcast. And then it went on and told me all about your outsourcing rendering company and visualization, and why visualization is such a great topic to have on a BIM focused podcast. And I went back to it. I said, "Tell me what Reveal does."
Yeah.
And went on and I'm like, now tell me what Sam does, and it gave me a completely different
Yeah.
response.
Wow.
I'll share it with you because it's real funny. But
That's
if I
funny.
didn't know you and I was doing some
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
independent research and I just used that, I'd I'd look like an idiot.
Yeah. Wow.
So
That's interesting.
hmm,
Wonder where I got that from.
I think it's just the name. It's probably hallucinated
There's
based on the name.
I know there is one other Sam Wiffen in the UK because I got some abusive message on Facebook once from someone thinking I was he, and a few Domino's pizza orders that have come through with the wrong email address. And then there's also a Sam Wiffen in La Hutt. She works for GNS as well. Like she's
Yeah,
young, so I've
yeah,
messaged
yeah.
her a couple of times.
Oh, that's a hard case. I haven't met any other Jake Nashes, but I know they exist. Um, so all right, so you're at Opus.
Yeah,
At some point, you decide to move on from there and do something else.
yeah.
What?
So Opus. Yeah, let's lean on Opus. Um, Man, it was awesome. I will always hold Opus up in very, very high regard, principally because the amount they invested in the people. And
Mm,
it was awesome. I learned so much there. I had a great set of managers. Shout out to Joe Furs and Peter Baines, especially Peter Baines, um, who really sort of largely left me alone. It's been interesting, like you hear the term sort of manager. I never really had to manager. I just had an enormous amount of support. I
mm,
had a few hospital passes in terms of like big leaky building things, and I was just a young person that kind of holding the ball a little bit, exposed to big asset management water projects in like Malaysia, but fell in love with the heavy electrical space, working for Transpower, and I loved the maybe because I'm a bit of a prick when it comes to this sort of stuff, but like I really embodied representing Transpower as my customer. And as a project
mm,
management role, we had to hold lots of other engineering firms to account, which was at sort of at odds with uh, different business groups within Opus. And I really enjoyed that, mainly because it just annoyed the engineers a little bit. But having to set up Chinese walls and do proper procurement process. It was a really cool role from that. I jumped into the asset management and facilities management space, primarily in the facilities management space. And that was so cool. I had a region of the southern North Island to look after all the facilities management projects, and that covered buildings and grounds and utilities, fencing, and it was just cool. And I was able to craft my own way that I'd look at project management. Uh, Great set of contractors and subcontractors. Learned huge amounts about procurement and the relationships and how people stand by their work and writing business cases and looking at the value and then solutioning or how we'd look at different options of what would need to be done. Phenomenal, like metallurgical projects with hydrogen sulfide kicking around and like all sorts of different projects. And it was great. And they just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
mm.
At the same time, I just had a real strong drive towards leadership training, and I got thrust into that quite a lot. And some awesome opportunities around running the actual intranet of the entire company, of which I said to the chief exec, Dave Prentice at the time, like, I'm an IT project manager. He goes, good, I don't want one. I want a construction project manager to understand this and drive it through. And in hindsight, it was a huge opportunity. There's a guy, Chris Newton, as well, legend. He was a regional lead, but he'd done lots of acquisitions, supported Opus in some acquisitions, and he was one of the big dogs. And his son Tom Newton was working in my project management team, hired him in, which was awesome. Anyway, yeah, Opus just invested a lot in that leadership side, and it was actually really cool. Um, Sort of connecting with people recently around a lot of that training and what had happened, and we don't really seem to get that as much, I think. Well, not that I've been in a big company since, but I definitely wouldn't be here if I wasn't there. And I remember Dave Prentice asking me at one point, um, I think it was, who do you want to be in the future? What's the plan? He said who, and he didn't say what. And he said, write down a two-pager, come back to me. And Mike Eagle, one of the other senior leaders there. And I think I didn't even get past like the first sentence because it kind of just sent me down this absolute rabbit hole of like who, not like what was the role, like who did I want to be, like what were my values and how did I start to look at that, and that was enough. It was such a simple kind of question, and it was hit me at the right time. But yeah, it was cool. Really, really cool to have a young team as well. We all started doing our project management training, so looking at PMBOK. Again, my philosophy was you're like a builder. You can do PMBOK or you can do Prince2, you can all these different project management frameworks. But at the end of the day, like just use them as tools. You pull the right tool out in the right scenario, you might blend them and do different things to get the right outcome. Yeah, so that was awesome, and ended up being a program manager for a national seismic upgrade for all the critical substations across the country, which was awesome. Which was a massive project. But I think again, from an accidental perspective, really understanding the facilities management side and asset management side was a big unlock for me, because I think projects are heralded as these big, sexy things. You get the construction and all the capex, and we build the big bridge or the utility, and it's a $1 billion thing. But then you're like, well, actually, the bit that really matters, or a very, very important part, is the 80 years of return you get off that asset. How do you start to look at that? And I think that deep understanding and practical experience in working in facilities management, asset management, drove me to get into digital twins a little bit more. Sort of started that sort of curiosity there.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So when you were doing this facilities management and asset management, was that all still primarily spreadsheet based at the time? Yeah, of course.
And we do like long-term maintenance plans and stuff like that. And it's funny when you're involved with the sort of upfront part of that. After I did a diploma in infrastructure asset management as well. Kind of, I don't know, when was that? Maybe 5 years ago. Again, just did it. It took forever to kind of get it through. But when you start to look at the asset and you need those calculations, you go, well, how long are we looking at operating this asset for? And that's a very important thing, because it comes quite a pivotal number when you do your calculations. Funnily, last year I was involved in pitching for a enormous project in Saudi, and this is of significant cultural importance, this particular project, and the scope and brief for it was horrific. Someone had used AI to go through it, and we were getting encouraged to price it, and we were going to price it. But when I asked them, like, why are we doing this? Like, full scan to BIM, you name it, like everything, like digital twin, like basically pressing every single button on the lift. And the why was, we want the asset to endure. We want to make sure this can be around. And then as the question left my mouth, of like, well, how long? Like, thinking from an asset management perspective that you kind of put in the number, the answer was like generations, eternity. You're like, whoa,
yeah,
holy crap, that's amazing to kind of think about that time scale for a asset's not a good enough word for what it is, but it's just interesting to understand the asset management side, which isn't as sexy, which isn't as cool. But having had the experience there, sort of gone from construction to now the operations and maintenance was a privilege.
Yeah, and you look at something like Wellington at the moment, right, or how it's been in the last couple of years, or these other cities. New Zealand's, by all accounts, a relatively new country in terms of the cities that are built, but Wellington and Auckland and Christchurch are sort of coming to the end of their first infrastructure cycle.
Yeah.
Or maybe they've already passed their first infrastructure cycle, and we just don't know what's down there, or how to maintain it, or how to operate it. Yeah. And it's something that we can't do again.
No. And it's interesting because there's an enormous amount of human behavior that sits in there. Going back to the spreadsheets, right? If you're looking at an asset management sheet from a valuation perspective, you'll be like, oh, well, it was a condition code of 2, and then we might have missed a couple of years. Like, it's so easy to go through and put these arbitrary numbers in there. They have huge impacts on like the valuation of that asset. And then that governs when you do your operational sort of repair or refurbishment or potentially replacement or, recycling that back in. When it comes to like a building, you can see it dilapidating. You can see the paint flaking off. And arguably with some of the underground infrastructure, you can kind of see that through constant but reasonably expensive investigations. But asset failure is binary. Like, you could be walking down the street and be puppies and rainbows, and then boom, a water main will explode. So right before the water main exploded, it had a 99% chance of failure, like the risk of failure. And it's just interesting when you think around a lot of underground asset failure is binary. It's either failed or it hasn't. So you have to start to work on all these different sort of inputs in terms of sensing and technology and probability, or all these wider factors. And that got me into, it's interesting when you sort of mentioned the rendering thing, because I've spoken a little bit around this. I am obsessed with the underground and the visual language of the underground. And when it comes to, you can't see it. So therefore you have to create a proxy for what is underground, because humans, you can't see that. So when we look at 3D modeling, then I go, I'm like, what does risk look like? Like, does risk pulse? Does it move? Is it red? Is it a color? And that's really subjective based on everyone else's perception of risk. So it's a fascinating thing in terms of the failure of that, and then how digital twins would apply. But the rate of replacement is not keeping up with the degradation of the underground infrastructure. Nowhere near.
Yeah. God, it's so interesting. Yeah, so let's go into that then. So at some point we're on the same path, and they diverge at some point.
Yeah.
You go full Ninja Turtle arc and go fully underground.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that's great. Ninja Turtle arc. I'm using it.
Yeah. What's so where did Reveal come from? At what point did you say, you know what, I'm just going to start my own company?
Yeah. So always kind of probably had entrepreneurial tendencies. Two of my best mates, Ollie Kirk and Luke Hurley, I was working with Ollie, and we sort of had similar tendencies, but different sort of veins, and probably around the same time that I was asking who rather than what. We just want to be better at business. We want to climb the corporate ladder and all that bullshit. And you'd see like the Harvard Business Review, and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to learn a lot from like HBR. But that shit's expensive when you don't have a lot of money. And we're going, well, why don't we do side hustles? And then by the act of like starting and running a company, we'll get a bit of cash in the door, and we can then afford to get this. And, rather than going and doing a business degree, Luke had done an MBA and a music degree, phenomenally smart human. Learning by doing was just great. So we ended up doing a little scaffolding company on the side, which we ended up selling, and we did one of probably we did something that was mature beyond our years, which I think was really, really cool. We were battling to get on top of all the little things we're trying to do in our spare time. We're like, look, we just need to get together. So we did a roadie up to Taranaki, and we went to the Old Boys Cricket Club. This would be so funny if these guys watch this. And because Ollie used to play cricket up there, they're both from Taranaki. And we just got whiteboards and paper, and we just went ham. We're like, what do we want to be doing with the rest? Like, let's start at like 80 and work backwards. And that was holistic, not just like career, but wealth and family and well-being and health and mind. And we kind of wanted to build and start companies, or like acquire and help companies grow, because we were voracious learners. And we then did a lot of these sort of like character profiling things, and Opus did a phenomenal one. Dots, shout out to Dots. Did it in Reveal recently. It's incredibly powerful. And I've done heaps of them, and we were all sort of sat quite spread across like a circle, if you will, which was great. That's phenomenal to have that good diversity amongst us all. And we were going, well, look, we really just need to start. And I'd been using a utility locator and a utility surveyor on my projects for Transpower. It was great. He was like one of the only guys in the country. And we were potentially looking at whether we do something with him, and we decided to just go and do it ourselves. And it was just an opportunity to kind of do that. And wouldn't say it was directly, but talking to some really good people in Opus, including the CEO, kind of going, you've got to get out. Like, I was asking questions with an Opus going, man, how do I, like, the model is we sell time. Like, if I look at everything that we're doing, our share price of the business was purely off just selling time. And the only way you could increase the share price was to do more volume, be more efficient, which is more hours. And I was trying to set up a GIS platform for Wellington Airport actually to track asbestos across the whole site, because I was like, hey, it'd be pretty awesome. You get close to the end of the financial year, if directors have to pull the trigger on something, like, why don't we move something that's we're liable for? But then we could look at a different revenue stream. We could look at having this sort of annuity that we could create this sort of platform. And the encouragement was like, we never sort of changed the engineer's mind. It probably was just the start of that. And then now these engineering firms are doing phenomenal sort of different technology solutions. But it just came down to like, who's going to pull the trigger? Who's going to go out and do it first? And I think because I had the penchant to like learn the technology and understand that a little bit more, we decided that I was going to be the first one to kind of jump out and go and do this. And talked to some contractors, and they debt funded us to go out and do this, and then started in July 2012, primarily as locating. And they'd won, those contractors had won some fibre contracts in Christchurch and Wellington, which they'd lost quite quick after it. They still did work there, but the big upside was no longer there, and it came to like, oh shit, we better find some work. That started Reveal, and there's lots more about
Yeah.
that. My gosh.
It's not even that long ago, really, is it?
Nah.
Probably feels a long time ago for you, but
definitely lost some teeth and some blood.
Yeah.
And that.
It's you think, what's that, 12, 13 years ago?
Yeah, coming up 14 years. Yep. Which is a good nudge. Like, there's all those tropes of everyone's like, oh, startup survives beyond 3 years, you've done well. I was kind of ignore that. You just know what it is. But definitely, well, like my approach to it was a ground penetrating radar, and we selected a company in terms of the supply, because I don't know what the fuck I was looking at. I was just going around looking at these things going, yeah, cool. But what was the training like? What was the equipment and the sort of software? And just asking these questions. Didn't have anyone else to ask. But the company that we chose to go with they were geophysicists. Like, these guys knew their shit. And I kind of feel like the industry was selling this like new fandangled ground penetrating radar. It's a silver bullet. You can see stuff underground. And it was sort of moving boxes, where the geophysics was really, really good, because they're going, this is not a utility locating tool. This is a geophysical instrument. It just sometimes is good for that. So then I was like, oh yeah, great. I'm just going to hire young geophysicists and geologists, because they're the most competent people to fly this thing. And at the time, Australia was having a bit of a downturn in exploration and mining. And I thought, this would be pretty good. And so the incorrect assumption that I'd made is like, okay, I'm going to put the best people behind these things. So that means that our quality is going to be way higher than the market, and people will pay the premium, because what are customers doing? They're trying to avoid hitting shit underground to keep their program going. Boy, was I wrong. Like, and this sort of threw me down the path of like value. Like, what is value? And we're even doing this right now with Reveal in terms of our product. And a role that I bring is my deep understanding of the industry. And we've got young product people or engineers going and talking to potential customers, and they go, yeah, absolutely, we care about safety, we care about these things. And then they'll go through and they'll say, we should do this. I'm like, no. And they go, no, but they said. I'm like, yeah, they were lying. Like, they say it because they have to say it. Like, and you have to get behind the true meaning. So when someone's like, oh, hey, why'd you spend 20 hours marking and mapping out the ground here? Like, because it was really, really difficult. There was lots of stuff to do. And they're just like, oh, fuck, it's a big bill. And they're like, your hourly rate's too high. I'm like, it's because we're good. And we're giving that end product. They care about ticking the box. They care about compliance. They don't care about the value. Now, that's a broad sweep, right?
Yeah,
It's
of
not
course,
everyone.
of course.
But just understanding that is a brutal truth of like, and what are people actually buying? And
Yeah.
buying compliance is a harsh reality.
And
Yeah.
at some point, you obviously must have got a big piece of work or something because your team grew quite
Yeah.
a lot. Were you still primarily based in Wellington at the time or New Zealand
So,
at the time?
so we started in Wellington and Christchurch at the same time.
Yeah.
Uh, a significant hire was Callum Bruce, who's still with us today. He's a principal geophysicist. So I started in July, and he started in April. He and Daya started in April. And genius, like so good. He's a principal geophysicist now, and Callum's been on the entire journey and an incredibly important person. And understanding the geophysics was so cool for me to understand that foundation of sort of Socratic reasoning and evidence. Well, evidence to some degree, like geophysics is a little bit of dark art. It's like trying to pin down smoke. And I found it really, really tricky when we're doing geophysics projects, which we were, that you'd sort of say, here, we're going to give you this deliverable, but we can't really guarantee anything. Like, and you're like, what's the value? Like, how do we deliver that? And there's so many variables around that, which was tricky for me to reconcile that. So the geophysics stuff was good for us, but it was real hard. And I could tell you 1,000 war stories. An interesting one is we signed a big deal with one of the tier one contractors because they're like, look, like you young bucks, like what you're doing, I just want to deal with you. Let's go. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, fun times, technology. So there was a little bit of an awkward cut there because we had a bit of a technical issue. I dropped off for about 5 minutes, but Sam, you were talking about a big contract with a main contractor and the growth of Reveal.
Yeah.
Is that where we got to? Or
Yeah.
kind of moved a bit beyond that?
Yeah. So it was just an interesting one where big companies, right, versus little companies, and so we won the contract, signed the deal. We had to renege on everything. Basically, we didn't have insurance because they said, oh, well, if you're negligent, if we choose to. So it was awesome. Ollie is a commercial lawyer, so he was able to kind of help us guide through a lot of that robust legal approach. But anyway, we got a letter in the mail saying, hey, have you heard about this fibre work? Would you like to tender for it? And we're going, we've kind of got the contract. What's the go? It took ages to try and get hold of people. Eventually did, and they said, yeah, we've decided to go a different direction. Well, kind of too bad. You've done it. And they said, well, our lawyers are bigger than your lawyers, so you're just going to bugger off. So that was a hard pill to swallow. So I started tendering for things and then quadrupling my price, putting it in there just to prove a point. And they're like, oh, you lost because you're very expensive. I'm like, that's all right, please send me the next one. And I was just trying to prove a point. We sort of had a chat with some senior people that were going, what's the message? And I'm like, and this is a big tier one. I'm like, you can tell them to go fuck themselves. And you're like, ooh. I'm like, this is bullshit. Can't do that. But it was probably the best thing that happened because we were going for high quality. We knew what we were trying to do. We were the first ones that were doing like reports. And from that, we then started really only choosing customers and clients that wanted that deliverable. And that just changed it. I was going from, I couldn't forecast like a week ahead to then we had 6 months work ahead of us, which was great. And then we got into big mapping projects. And I think a really cool foundation for me at least was having a services company because we were, how do we collect as much information or data underground as possible at a high quality was lower cost. And because we had a ton of really, really smart people in the business, we started playing around with different technology. And 2016, which is probably about a year after that happened. We're doing a project, big asset management project, and we're looking at live updating of underground infrastructure in the field, and we're using Trimble GPS equipment. And I was just being like I do when you get a menu that covers the screen and it says give feedback, and like menu sucks, covers the screen, and Trimble ended up ringing us. Trimble being a big global GPS manufacturer, and they're going, "What are you
Yeah,
doing?"
yeah.
I said, "Oh, we're doing this big asset management thing." They're like, "Oh, this is amazing. Would you like to come speak about this in the US?" I'm going, "This is the US. Like, surely you've got this dialed in." And then I got there and I'm like, "Oh no, holy shit." And
Yeah.
a big municipality out of LA got chatting to a lot of the water guys, and they were saying, "Hey, look, can you come and do a 5-year gig with us to try and implement subsurface utility engineering as a discipline?" I'm like, "Well, we've got 6 staff. Like, I crushed the business and contracts and all that sort of stuff." But that really, and I was there at the conference, and a guy, Marcus McCarthy, who's head of Trimble Water at the time, had just released the Trimble SX10, which is a big fancy laser scanner thing, very expensive. And he goes, "See that guy over there?" And there's some guy standing with a pole and a small little disc connected to a cell phone. He goes, "That is the single most important bit of technology at this conference. We're not talking about it." I'm like, "What is it?" He goes, "Go and have a chat." So we're in chat, and it was the Catalyst receiver. It was the first one they had done, which represented sort of like the democratization of positioning. So it was a real cheap consumer grade, sort of like positioning on demand. And it was just it was a real brave step in that new direction. And that blew my mind. I'm like, oh man, you can democratize positioning. Because like I got it right. Like augmented reality had sort of come out. And I can't think of a more compelling value proposition than you can hold your cell phone up and you can see all the underground utilities. Like, that's great. Like, yeah, I know
Yeah.
you can see your big fancy BIM buildings and stuff like that and show the client and stuff where you can look at the new chair that you buy from Amazon in the corner of the room. But like, what a great value proposition. And actually,
Yeah.
before that, we started working on it with Frond in Wellington, software development company. Started getting going on nothing about developing software. And there was a company called AugView that had done it. Had sort of released an underground utility augmented reality system. I was like, great, awesome. I don't really care about doing that. I just thought everyone would go, awesome, I can have underground information, augmented reality, but I can't do it unless I've got accurate data. And then they go, well, where do I get accurate data from? Oh, I get it from Reveal. Reveal would be the best ones to go out and capture that information. But
Yeah. So
again,
what's the
wrong. Like, no, you go.
what's the output look like? So when you go out and you reveal all of these underground services,
Mm.
you hand that over to whoever you're working for. Is that in a modeled format? Like what's the output that they take, and then
Yeah.
what do they do with it?
So it's variable. It's variable
Mm.
based on maturity, on budget, on software, on the design team, on lots of different things. On budget was like, well, just give me where they are. But then
Mm.
we got into this real big problem. We have the existing records, which we had to either ingest and sort of automate there, and that's a big thing that we've sort of conquered now with Reveal. And then you've got where it's been detected. So you've got two representations of the same thing. And even the detected one, you're like, we're not 100% certain that that's there, but it's a
Mm.
better indication. And that was a really interesting thing for me around how would we deliver that? And because it is a variable thing. And there's horrific stories all around the world. I was just talking to a big construction firm down in Melbourne where they had a big new bulk water main going through, and they were going, well, we've got the existing records here, but then we've had it located here and surveyed there. We can't fit it anywhere. The engineer hadn't reconciled and go, well, it's not in both locations. So we could probably resolve the existing record, and now we've got the room to put the bulk water main in. But they then shifted everything into the center of the road, which bumped the cost up massively. There was just a real lack of maturity in how to use that subsurface utility information. So
Mm.
subsurface utility engineering as a discipline was sort of kicked off in the US, on the east coast of the US. And in 2002, there was the American Society of Civil Engineers released the first standard, 3802, which was amazing for me to find that. Like, big shout out, and I was talking to a guy from BSI last year, the British Standards Institute, and I was saying, from an entrepreneur, standards sort of, well, industry would probably see our standards, these stuffy old things that we have to try and meet and all these sorts of things. They were huge for me in the growth of my business as an entrepreneur, because it gave me these sort of like a level playing field to communicate with customers, and especially with the underground, because you've got a variable output. It'd be hard. Someone says, "How much is it?" And you go, "Well, maybe like this much." And how long is a piece of string? You could spend 10,000 hours on a site and still not be 100% confident you know where everything is. But there's this sort of law of diminishing returns. So if you can't control the output, what can you control? You can control the methodology. And the standard would go through and say, as long as you've done this, 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 and the people are confident and use these sorts of things, that's reasonable for them to go, I've done that. Now everyone can price that apples for apples and then still deliver a variable output, but at least the customer knows they've been given value for money. So that was really, really cool to kind of understand that. The reason I mentioned that as well, because the other variable is, how do you deliver the information? Do people just want you to reconcile it? They want all the information there. And we found a lot of the time we'd deliver a 2D output of existing records, of mapped utilities, of pothole or like surveyed, which we didn't reconcile. It was all just evidence. It was very Socratic, saying we have evidence here, we do not have evidence here, so you report it. And there might be like an unknown utility with a break. And the break would be because you couldn't get the radar there or something, or you just didn't have evidence. But then the engineers would bring that information in and go, okay, well, I'll put the thing through here. And you go, like, it's not like it doesn't. Like, a high probability it exists there. And like, we haven't got any evidence there. And you're like, oh, yeah. And we used to kind of like grizzle at them for being kind of daft about it all. But then we're like, you know what? That's actually on us. Like, we're not presenting that information in a way that is compelling for them to absorb that and understand it through their workflows. We found heaps of limitations as well, like how do we put the tolerances of error? How do we put all the evidence, the time, the spatial corrections, all in the metadata on like a CAD line string? It was just really, really tricky. And the global standards would go some degree towards articulating what that model would look like. The Australian standard does that very, very well in part 2, where it defines the model level, similar like how BIM does with LODs to some degree. But that was something that we excelled in. We would work with every single engineering consulting firm in New Zealand and Australia, who all use different tools. And we got really, really good at delivering that information in a format all the time for them so that they could consume that easily. But that was tricky in the way that we would have to deliver that information based on like a specification or something where they would drive. Rarely did we get the opportunity to say, this is the best way to deliver the information. A lot of the time it was governed by the customer. That was kind of how we did the work. How we thought about solving the problem and how we continue now to think about solving the problem is quite different. To your question, it was like, how do you deliver that information spatially? And this comes back to that visual language of the underground. And we've done all sorts of cool things like creating 3D tolerances of error around the utilities, which we call the sausage of truth. Because, and I'll explain it because we're on a BIM thing. If you have lots of confidence around a detection, your tolerance of error is small. If you have a lower confidence, the tolerance error is big. And if you 3D model them all, they look like sausages because you've got intermittent pieces. And it was just fun. We created Sausage of Truth t-shirts as well.
Yeah. I think I'm going to name this episode The Sausage of Truth with Sam Wiffen from Reveal.
But then it gets into back to the augmented reality stuff. All well and good. You can have a millimeter accurate model, like really, really good data. But the other variable is how do you position your device through which you consume that information. So the spatial positioning of the device is a tricky thing. And when you start thinking like, who's going to use this? Is it contractors? Half the contractors can't spell GPS. Like, how do you functionally make that work for them? And a lot of augmented reality applications outside of the underground don't need to have sub 50 mil positional accuracy. So bridging the gap was key. And then 2018, we helped Trimble build Sight Vision. So we're early adopters, and I ended up going to the States and speaking about that, which was one of the first big sort of rolls out. And it's still being used now is in the States, watching Sight
Yeah.
Vision being deployed at Connex recently.
Yeah, I want to get into your you've done quite a few little trips to the States to talk about various things, but before that, since we're talking about discovering stuff underground, and I appreciate if you can't mention who it was for or what, but have you ever come across something that you just really didn't expect to find, or any kind of horror stories where something was there that shouldn't be, or something wasn't that really should?
Yeah, yeah. So there's lots of those sorts of things. We some highlights. Well, we're all ambulance chasers to some degree, us utility engineers underground. We're like, whoa, that's cool. But it's not really because it's a disaster. Uh, Gas is horrific. We find gas sometimes 14 meters away from where the existing records show that they are. We've found large, large, large bits of stormwater infrastructure that are not on any records. Um, Probably because they weren't handed over and just like everyone at the end of the projects, everyone starts looking over the parapet going, where's the next project that I'm on? And handover is never really that good. That's a big thing that we're trying to address. Uh, it's funny, you deal with the electrical sector and the way that they think around a lot of electrical assets. They'll go through and decommission something. So then they put decommission on the drawings, and then after a while they'll remove it. But just because they've pulled a voltage transformer out of a substation doesn't mean that the 33 kV line has also been pulled out. So there's a lot of redundant stuff underground that isn't on the records. In some cities, we've found up to 43% of all the utilities underground are not on any records. There's a little bit of a double count there because some of them are so inaccurate that you can't assume that they are the other thing. We had a cool little expedition, which we did for free to go and explore and find the pink and white terraces
Oh, awesome.
up in Rotorua. Yeah, which was cool, and it was a really cool thing. There was some old chap, very sort of Henry Morton Stanley-esque, like piff piff, let's go, and he'd found an old diary from a survey called Hofstadter in Germany. Someone had found the diary, and it was the only known survey. So did some calculations, and we took our deepest radar, which can kind of go down like 30 meters, like never would, but best case scenario. And Niwa had one as well, and we went there for 3 or 4 days and stayed in the marae and tried to find them, which was a fascinating experience. And then Niwa went and recalculated it, and we're like, oh no, it's probably actually in the lake. And then they went and subsequently have found evidence of it. So that was awesome to go and explore for the eighth natural wonder of the world.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's actually talk of you might know more about this than I do, but apparently in Wellington there's 8 historic streams that
yeah,
go to the harbour, and there's talk about trying to restore and rewild some of those and bring them back to the surface. Apparently they have like eels and stuff all over them. They're
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
piped streams that go from the hills and the mountains to the harbour, just completely under the
yeah.
city. But
And there's
whether
the
we know where they
ones.
are or not, yeah.
Well, there's one, funnily enough, really, really close to where we went to university in Waller Street. You go down Waller Street, and there's a little cafe. Um,
Yeah, I know the one.
yeah, that sort of keeps changing hands.
Mm.
We popped a lid there at like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning, and this thing was deep. It's either 7 or it was 13 meters deep. Don't know. But you could hear the
Yeah.
stream at the bottom of it. This like it hadn't been raining, so it wasn't stormwater trickling. It wasn't sewer because it wasn't warm, which is horrific. But you could hear this old diverted stream like going through.
Mm.
So yeah, they are kicking about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some wild stuff underneath Wellington, like the interceptor, which all the contractors know about. Basically all the sewer north of Johnsonville goes out through Mile Point. Like that is the entire catchment. And there's this
Yeah.
whopper
I
of an
don't know if you've
interceptor.
been watching the news about Wellington
Yeah,
and Mile
yeah,
Point
yeah, yeah.
recently, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of like phenomenal. One of my jobs is to kind of be a voice of the guys and girls that are out there working at night time,
Mm.
sort of don't receive anywhere near the amount of praise that they should. There's been some disasters where people have really pulled their socks up and sort of helped the city, and everyone just sort of sleeps and complains in the media. But there's an enormous amount of people that kind of just band together and get stuff done. I've got an enormous amount of embodied sort of experience and care out there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. So you built a little company, you started doing some awesome stuff that no one else was doing.
Yeah.
You find yourself on the international stage. What's that like?
Yeah, so that was interesting. We classic Kiwi approach of when we got overseas, we started meeting other companies. We just thought what we were doing was just normal. And then we keep getting this feedback of like how awesome we're going. And we're like, surely, you don't believe it. So then you keep asking and you keep wondering and you keep going talking. And then I talk to different universities and sort of titans of industry that are just like, what you're doing is revolutionary. And I'm like, really? That's wild. Right? It just seemed logical for us to kind of do that. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, and this probably says quietly, like I've never taken any money out of the business. Everything just went in to grow, to to keep doing that. Look, we built an app in 2016 to do scalar penetrometers because it felt like it got into IoT. Not that we want to do that. We thought we were really good at capturing what is it, where is it, underground, how it's performing is one of the sort of final pieces. And when IoT popped out, you could buy an IoT sensor to do telemetry for like $100. And we're going, well, if we're opening a lid, could we just epoxy an IoT sensor underneath it? And then we're sort of starting to liven up the entire network. And that gets into the whole digital twin thing. Did a cool IoT project. Huge learning off that. Like we had the sensors in for a week and just how the sensors performed. We could then look at historical data and see how that asset had been performing for a while. That was awesome. So we had this really sort of holistic view, and I think from the asset management perspective on it all, but also like shunning normal technology. There's a lot of sort of gearheads out there that will go, oh, I want we've never owned a drone. And there's a lot of people in Reveal that are upset about not having a drone. But I've always considered drones like flying liability. Like I don't want the labor, I just want the baby. Like what's the outcome that we're after? We're after that. Great, get a professional to go and do that capture. Let's bring that back in. I'm not discrediting drones. I just didn't want to have the liability of that flying around. Because a lot of people just want to fly a drone. Like, it's a cool thing to do. I get to go to work. I get to fly my drone around, do all sorts of cool stuff. So that sort of view and how fast we could go and capture the underground and then model that, you just have to hit all parts of it. Did a bit of speaking at different events online, and then started being introduced into universities. So Purdue University was a good one. So spoken there a couple of times and got put onto the Buried Asset Management Infrastructure International Ambassador thing and got really good feedback. They were the first ones that were really driving a lot of subsurface utility engineering stuff and good validation from there. Started to work quite a bit with Singapore and the digital underground work that had been happening there with ETH Zurich and the way they were thinking about solving the problem. And we'll kind of just kept on being pointed at to be the ones that solve that. But the big one was we kept on being asked to map the same shit over and over again. Like, which you're like, cool, if you're a services company, and had we just done that, we'd make, good money. But it comes down to our people, and like, it's just barbaric to think that you'd have someone out there at 3:00 in the morning with sideways rain on Taranaki Street, going back 6 months after they've opened a lid to go and capture it again. Like, it just makes no sense. There's just, and the deep care that I have and Reveal's had for its people, we couldn't allow it. But then you go, this is fascinating, like we needed to sort of democratize the demand. Say, could we proactively capture a city at our cost and then sell that for a fraction of the price on demand? And that was going to cost a lot of money. So I ended up raising capital to go through and validate that hypothesis. And that was
Mm.
post-COVID. And then all the sort of like financial, windstorms came through, and
Yeah.
we're all learning how to build product and technology. And it was a really complex piece around combined services to do data acquisition. And you have to build a platform, then you have to build a conflation tool, and a lot of that. And probably did this probably 3 years too early ahead of AI, and the way that we kind of consider that in a different way now
Mm.
for the creation of data. So with that, we started to get a lot more traction on the international stage. And now, like it's really cool. There's three companies that are known as like the AI utility guys, and that's Exotigo, who do sensor fusion, which is cool tech. They've raised like 140 million US. 4M
Oh, wow.
Analytics have raised like 65, and we've raised like 6. But we're in the narrative, right? We're talking about this. So we did some amazing things in New Zealand, and worked with some amazing companies and customers and clients. And yeah, we've done that around the world a bit. But the big one here that we're at the moment in Australia is we're working with Before You Dig Australia, which is like the Die Before You Dig, or the 811 equivalent in the US. And it's a unique setup because they're a charity. So the beneficiaries are all of the sort of stakeholders are all the utilities themselves. And so we're creating the digital utility platform where we're bringing every single utility's existing records into one spatial platform. And that just has billions of dollars worth of economic benefit for Australia. So right now we're rolling out the pilot across 4 cities, which is cool. So Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, and Perth. And the ambition for the platform's huge, to get into the continual improvement cycle. How do we feed the information back to the utilities to improve their records? And that's
Yeah.
globally rare. Not a lot of other places are looking at that.
That's so awesome, man. I'm so stoked for you guys and what you've built over the last 20 years.
Thanks, man.
Um, Looking forward, so that we don't go through this again with
Yeah.
the next infrastructure cycle, not knowing where anything is and discovering all kinds of shit that we weren't expecting. What do people in our space, whether that's horizontal, vertical,
Yeah.
digital engineers, BIM managers, what do we need to be doing to be making sure that we leave the next group of people in a better position than the likes of you and I have found ourselves in?
Yeah. That's it's an awesome call to action. Uh, the leak in the ship is the as-builts. If
Mm.
all the as-builts were done phenomenally, and a lot of them have been, I think if we look back at the historical drafts people, the sort of our sort of forefathers in this space, there was huge amount of care and ownership on site. We find a lot of older records are really, really accurate. It's the advent of technology where businesses were like, oh, great, well, I don't need to employ those people anymore. And you've just lost all the confidence and trust in that information. So if all the as-builts were done correctly, then you wouldn't need to really do it. So that needs to be managed. And the contracts and the specifications define that, but it just doesn't happen. There's practicalities around doing that all. With technology now, using photogrammetry, using consumer-grade GPS, there's the governors of the construction of projects should really focus on making sure those as-builts are nice and accurate. And that's not just the
Yeah.
new things that are being built, that's the validation of the other things that you find during construction. So that's one big thing. But that's kind of like at the end. I say that at the end because you have to start with stopping the leak in the ship. So that's the
Mm.
important thing. Considering what's there is the next thing. How do we make sure that these designs are informed? And I've definitely been killing the engineer inside myself. I'm more of an activist now than I am engineer. And I used to, work for a large company that used to sell time, and you get a real big pat on the back if you could turn your fee into a bigger fee. And a great way to find the fee is through variations. And a
Oh man,
great
don't get
place
me
to find
started.
variations in the underground. So we've found and learnt horrific lessons that sometimes designers and contractors don't actually want to have accurate information underground because they slit each other's throats to get to the lowest price, and then they just camp a QS on site and just hunt variations. So it makes sense to get that information in, but there's like there is evidence of that, so that apathetic nature towards it all. And if we look at all the track record of major infrastructure projects all blowing out, a lot of that is in this sort of trope of like, well, it's unforeseen ground conditions, which is bullshit. You can definitely soil some of that stuff really, really hard, and it's important that you can quantify that. But when it comes to some of the utilities, it's no longer acceptable to just go like, wow, we didn't really know, because should be following a proper process.
It's a hill I'm willing to die on. Honestly, our whole industry is valued on billable hours spent rather than outputs, and it's a real barrier, especially in this era where technology enables productivity so much. To just boil it down to how much time you put on a sheet seems to be a real challenge.
Totally, and we find places in the US. Right, where the only procurement model that municipalities or departments have is on hourly rates. That's the only contractual framework that's available to them, which is tough, because then how do you do that? Because, and it was really cool, 2 years ago in Wellington, there was an engineering conference, and it was the first time that I started to hear the tone change from how do we stop selling time to how do we start selling value? And I adore that, because that's merit, right? And you were saying in terms of technology, but I think technology to some degree has to be the savior. When you start to how do you quantify value? So a big thing that I've the research that I love doing is around the paradox of prevention, which is you spend a whole lot of money on preventing bad things from happening, and the best case scenario is nothing happens. And everyone's like, well, where's the thing? I'm like, no, we prevented all these bad things from happening, remember? I go, oh, yeah, I guess so. But then memory lapses, and then they're spending a whole lot of money, and there's some great examples in Pennsylvania and the US where they'd mandated subsurface utility engineering, and then some people came in and they're like, oh, this is costing us a lot. And then they stopped it, and then the costs went up. They're like, oh, crap, that's why we did it. Let's put that back in place. So expensive to learn, but I imagine it'll be quite cyclical, and we'll go through that all. But when you start to think about it and you go, and there's a cool project that I've got potentially at the moment where we're saying, look, I'd love to come in and say, I'm going to do data acquisition for you at cost plus a small percentage, but I'm going to work really, really hard with you in an open way to figure out how I reduce your operating costs. But I'm going to take a percentage of what I save you. B-Tune, actually, shout out to Sharon Corey, who I did building science with. Through Becca, their business goes through and effectively does the same thing. Hey, look, we'll automate the operational side of your building, and we'll take a margin, whatever the savings are, which is great. You only pay us if we save you money. That's merit. And if you can't do it, then you're not good. You should be able to demonstrate and articulate the value that you provide. And sometimes it's not available because customers sort of obfuscate that, or they hide it behind it. But I think we're starting to see a bit of a shift there when it comes down to value. And that's not just in a direct customer perspective as well. That's sort of municipal governance as well, like how the cities do that, because they govern a lot of that. How do we drive and create those opportunities to do that? It's a huge opportunity. I'm really excited to start to see different procurement models where it's value driven. It's not to say they're not here, because there are, but more so I think is great for society.
Yeah. Hey man, I've kept you a long time. Somewhere out there is some young guy or girl that is in their first year of architectural tech, like we were 20 years ago, that thinks they're probably going to come out and just be a drafty or a technician or eventually a BIM manager or something like that. What advice would you give to young people about kind of thinking outside the square and doing something different or unique.
Yeah, that's interesting. Uh, Everyone's super, super different. Um, I remember I did a little bit of, I talked at Victoria University a couple of times, and I was approached by some young people afterwards, saying, "How do I do what you're doing? How do I become a project manager? How do I go and like climb that kind of ladder?" And I said, "When do you finish your degree?" And they're like, "Oh, in 3 years' time." I'm like, "Awesome. Go work for a scaffolding company. Like, go go jump on the tools. Go and like figure that shit out. Like, go and
Mm.
understand. Like, too often we can sort of sit in the theoretical and not understand the reality of the supply chain. Like, the biggest thing is I get I get a lot of undue praise from people going, "Oh, it's amazing what you've done and you've accomplished," but no one kind of sees like the absolute, like sleeping in the ute, trying to grow to Hamilton, or like sleeping in a container in Christchurch, or just like the amount of like 20-hour days that we've done, like that hard, like horrifically hard work. Um, and I think anything when you think around like the broader built environment, it's being built by people, and understanding that supply chain is huge context. So I reckon everyone also needs a big dose of humility as well to understand like how other people live and what's important to them. It's you end up in like a software space like we are in a product perspective. You sort of deeply understand humans because everyone's like, oh yeah, we'll get the guys and girls out there to go through and do photogrammetric data capture when the trenches are open. I'm like, they don't give a shit about that. They care about what's in their lunchbox. Like, what's the motivation? Like, how do you don't really understand that from kind of being in there. So it's not I don't have a technological answer for that. It's a human answer of, understand the community and the supply chain that sort of and where you sit in that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, I agree. Uh, During those 3 years of uni, or those 4 years of uni, the most learning I did was my summer job working in construction sites.
Yeah,
That really supported what I was learning in the classroom.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's yeah, context, right? Goes back to the kind of like loops into the AI stuff. The more context you have, I think the better off you're going to be.
yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome, man. Hey, look, well, thank you so much for taking the time. I think our audience is going to really enjoy this because it's a little bit outside of our typical wheelhouse, but
yeah,
it's kind of all in service of the same goal, really, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
And
totally. Yeah, and look,
yeah,
mate, thank you. Like honor. I look forward to returning this because your story is phenomenal and your speaking has been incredible, and I've been very proud of everything that you've done, mate. So
oh, thank you, man.
yeah, it's been a huge honor. And look, the one final thing when I was mentioning like the Wellington and that, I was in Colorado 2 years ago, or kind of almost a year and a half ago, at a Revisto conference. I know you had good strong ties there with them, and it was like a real homecoming for me because there was heaps of our sort of kin in terms of draftspeople and technicians. And as I started to explain what we're doing, they're going, "This is phenomenal information, and this is what we're doing, and we'd love that." I'm going, "Oh yeah, because you guys get this around having the high quality inputs." And it was just I'd never really I'd sort of avoided that sort of the civil engineering and infrastructure space. So it was a real heartwarming experience, doubly so because of how much Wellington is
Mm.
globally recognized from like a BIM perspective. And I'd sort of departed from that and hadn't really realized until I came back to all these superstars of the sector, the little sort of nucleus that was Wellington. So I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, and a good few of them out of that random 5.5 year messy
Yeah,
um,
man.
architectural technology
And not just
degree
there, but
that
like
doesn't exist anymore.
Wellington in general and the maturity
Yeah.
of that BIM space. It's been very, very proud globally to talk around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Hey, I was thinking of you yesterday when I bought my Perfect Circle tickets for
Oh, I saw
December.
that. The
Yeah,
touring.
yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Um, thank you for your time, and to everyone out there, thank you for your time as well.
Yeah, thanks
Cheers,
for the
everyone.
opportunity, Jake. Well done. Keep it up. Much love.